Welcome everyone to Rising Out of the Chrysalis Stories That Inspire with Marissa Grace, where we share life stories of struggle and triumph, not only of my own life experiences, but also through the experiences of my own guests, as a way to help you have breakthroughs and find hope in your own life. Welcome, everyone. I would like to welcome Cody Packer to our show. Welcome, Cody.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you opening up the space and can't wait to dive into a deep conversation.
Absolutely. I am so happy that you're here to share your story. Now, your story started at the age of 3. So take us back and tell us what happened around that age.
Um, yeah, so 3 years old. I don't actually remember a lot around this time, but what I do know is what I've looked at from home videos. Like my parents, as were a lot of parents of that age, they loved capturing on their home DV camcorder all sorts of memories, much in a much different way that we do now. And 3 years old is the earliest memory that I've recollected and I've witnessed on a home video recording my parents asking me questions on a couch and um, me starting to work out that I had what's called a speech impediment. A stutter is I guess like the pathological name for it. Um, yeah, I don't view it as an impediment, but what I noticed was 3-year-old Cody was kind of like, whoa, what's that? There was like half of him that was like trying to hide this thing. Like he noticed that he couldn't get the words out at the rate that like other people could. And he would have troubles and challenges completely, voicing what he knew he wanted to communicate in his mind, but it just wouldn't come out smoothly or in the way that it would come out for other people. And then there was the other part of me that was just really expressive and really curious and kind of like I could tell wanted to know what it was. So yeah, that's kind of like the initial, memory. But from there, what opened up was a journey through high school, my young teenage years, where I became quite self-aware of this. It was always a challenge for me to read my name out. In the roll call in class, my name is a thing that I would block and trip over quite frequently. And as I went to school, I started noticing I would have these like anxiety attacks in terms of me playing events in my mind of stuff that was going to happen throughout the day. And I was experiencing it in my body um, before it even happened. Like this was at home. I was imagining myself in English class having to read aloud and it going really bad and kids laughing at me. So we know the power of the mind and the body combined. Because the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and an experience, my body was having the experience of that. So therefore, calibrating that into my nervous system. So I was going off to school and I was carrying that into the classroom and into all the rooms that I went into. So there was this energy of me like kind of being a little like, in denial or scared of using my voice and how it sounded. There was some embarrassment around it. So, and at that age, I just learned to take everyone else's criticisms of me and, like the bullying I received, like very personally. So that created a journey for me of wanting to change my behavior and hide these parts of me in hopes that I would get loved and accepted by like anyone. This even went to the bullies. Like I remember becoming a bully to try and get the bullies to like me, so they would take, it would take the emphasis of them speaking about my voice. And what I realized over time is that I was playing many different roles to many different people, and it was just exhausting. And I, at the age of around 10, 12, my mom because she loved me so much, she was like, oh, we need to get you some help. Like, we need to go to some speech therapy, art therapy, hypnotherapy. She was very into more of, like, the natural realms. So she was trying to explore avenues that weren't necessarily the, like, the mainstream view. But we ended up trying everything because this was a thing that was just very prevalent in my life. And it was causing me a lot of frustration because I was so in denial of it and wanting to hide it. And my mum was wanting to bring it up and get help with it. But all these people I were going to get help from were telling me that I was a problem. Oh, you have something, you have a, speech disfluency, you have a problem, there's something wrong with you. We need to fix that. And we need to give you techniques so that you can speak fluently and you can feel good about yourself. They weren't asking me about what the emotional attachments I was making this mean of having this. And also, they weren't investigating my own internal landscape of like, oh, how does this boy feel in relation to what he's experiencing? It was just, how do we get to this solution? So that brought a lot of resistance up for me. And me being a stubborn young boy, I didn't want any help. I didn't believe I had a problem, because for me to admit, I had all these people telling me that I was a problem, and yet, like, no one likes to be told that they're a problem. So it just created these walls of armor, and I just tried to hide it for the longest time. And I remember going to a speech workshop in Australia. We lived in New Zealand at the time. So we took a 3, 4 hour plane ride over. My mum paid a lot of money at the time. And we went to this workshop, which was teaching people with stutters how to, quote unquote, speak fluently and breathe. And it was it wasn't taking any of the emotions, any of the psychological landscape into it. It was just focused on the mouth doing and producing results that wasn't natural to us. So it was going against the harmony of what was actually natural to us. And so we would do these exercises where we'll wear these belts around our, like around our diaphragms, and we'd have to basically pretend to be like a baby and learn how to breathe again. And then we would learn how to speak like this.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, it was a bunch of people sounding like robots. And then we had to go out to the street and introduce ourselves to 100 people as a way to get over, like, caring about what others think. But we had to do it with that slow voice. And then inside of me, my body is just so in resistance of like, this doesn't sound natural, this isn't comfortable, this isn't, like, there's all these emotions in me that is not getting, like, acknowledged. And they're just asking us to push through this because they believe that it's not okay to speak this fluently. And I just felt really like it was very challenging for me. I think I broke down a few times, and they kept trying to get me push through. It was like a boot camp style
Isn't
of
it
like,
interesting how, when we don't fit the model of society, society then tries to fix us, right? To fit
yeah,
into their mold, not taking into consideration, that maybe it's okay just the way you are, and
exactly.
accepting and, working with the individual. Now, going back to that little boy, um, did you notice or maybe became known later on that were your parents aware as children start to form words around 2 years old,
Mhm.
so by the time they're three, they kind of have sentences together. So did they start noticing there was, your speech was a little bit different, or um did they point that out where you were noticing that you were different, or did they not say anything and make you feel that you're just a normal boy?
They were very good at trying to talk to me about it. I think they could see how much frustration it was giving me, and I think it hurt them to see and witness me in frustration. And I think it was a bit of both. I think there was an element where they didn't want to make it too much of a big deal, because, they didn't want to make it like my identity. Like, oh, we only need to, we care so much about this. There's almost that energy of like over smothering me with it. But, they were always extremely like loving and helping me with the tools that they had available at the time and the information they had at the time. They thought the best thing for me growing up was, obviously looking at getting help, but also asking me to slow down and breathe and this and that, which honestly is more frustrating because it's bringing attention to the fact that like I'm not speaking how you speak.
Right.
So there was a conflict, because like they'd never encountered anything like this before. It's pretty rare. Only like 1% of the population on this planet has a stutter. So it's not like exactly like a widely known about thing.
Right.
But what they did realize pretty quickly is that I love to talk. And I think like I didn't want to hide from it. Yes, it was causing me a lot of frustration and embarrassment. But also, there was this what my mum noticed was I love to talk, I love to act, I love to express myself. And it wasn't stopping me doing any of that. There would be days where it would really get me down and frustrated, but it wouldn't make me stop wanting to talk. So I think she realized that, like, oh, here's this kid who has, you know, a stutter, but there's also this greater desire there that he really loves and wants to use his voice.
Now, this frustration, did you start getting frustrated like earlier on, as you learned to speak since a young child, or did that develop as you became older and
Older.
facing, going to school and noticing and comparing yourself? Well, I'm not like the other kids.
Mm.
And now you're under all that pressure that you're comparing yourself to a whole classroom of kids. The teachers are pointing it out, making it even more obvious. So was that then that your frustration started to develop?
Yeah, it was definitely as I got into my young adulthood, like early teenage years. Probably being honest, when I was probably about 8, it started to start being more of a noticeable thing. I think when I was younger, I didn't quite know what it was, and I was almost trying to learn like, oh, is there a way around this? Like there was more curiosity there when I was younger. I could tell that from the home videos. Like there was a little bit of like knowing that it wasn't like other people, but there was also more curiosity. And then when I grew up and started being in more of the school environment where there was more external reflections of that's funny, we can tease you, this and that, that's when I started to get frustrated because I wasn't like everyone else. People were making fun of me, and it was frustrating, I think, to know what I wanted to communicate. And it looked like I didn't know what I wanted to communicate. Like I had a lot of opinions. I was very expressive. I was always wanting to offer my 2 cents, but there'd be times where it just couldn't come out. And that really frustrated me because other people would either try and talk over me, they'd try and finish my words for me, and it wasn't how I wanted to voice it. And that's where a lot of the frustration came from, I think, was knowing what I wanted to say, but then it couldn't come out in the way that I wanted it to come out.
Or the way like you had it in your thought process?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
like I've experienced what I experienced, I don't have a stutter, but what I do have is I call it more like a delay of informational processing
Mm-hmm.
to be vocalized.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have a thought and might have a whole conversation that, okay, this is what I want to say, and it sounds really good. But when the time comes to vocalize it and make it vocal, it doesn't arrive either on time
Mm-hmm.
or it just doesn't come out. So is that like the same way of when it comes to your speech that, okay, you know exactly what you want to say. It's there, it's very clear, but by the time, the information is sent over, because there has to be a communication between your brain and your voice box so that the information comes out, right? That either there's a delay. How, like, describe to me what kind of happens in the background from your perspective.
So I'm visual, so I'll visually explain it. It's it's like the thought comes in, and imagine it coming down out of the brain into the mouth as if you were chewing on like a screwed up piece of paper, and the piece of paper is about to be like spat out in the form of words. And it's like the piece of paper gets into the mouth and you know what you want to say, but then what it just it stays in the mouth. And it's a mixture between, there's no one cause of this, and it's very very determinant on variables down to the individual. So like for me, it was always, if a person asked a question where there was a time urgent response to it, where people were looking at me, that would be a time when my nervous system would go into freeze. And the words I would know, might even just ask me, hey, what's your name, nice to meet you. Everyone's looking at me, so that's a trigger to, that's happened in the past. Obviously, your mind is a wants to predict the future, and it's a memory of the past, and then our bodies hold recollections of traumatic events based on the trigger that I've got externally. So then I'm immediately, my nervous system becomes hijacked. I'm back to a past experience, and I'm stuck. I'm stuck on the word. So they're there. It's not that there's a delay or I can't find them. It's just that sometimes they take, like a different time to come out and at a different cadence. So like if you ask me my name one day, it might be, oh yeah, hi, my name's Cody. One day it might just be, hey, my name's Cody. And it's so randomized and so individualized, and there's varying degrees of it, individual to individual. So there's some kids I've worked with at a stuttering camp. It will take them 3 or 4 minutes to introduce themselves, and you just have to stay there with them and give them the time of day and give them a open and receptive, body language, and just be there with them. So it's very individualized, and it's all environment triggered. So like another one was, if I ever called up to order food on the phone, that was a environment where I would 9 times out of 10 stutter over my words and block, and there'd be like nothing, and the person on the other end of the phone is like, hello, are you there, is this a prank call? And then I would just get so nervous a lot of the times I would just hang up, and then I would ask my parents to ring back up and order. So it's very environment, kind of dependent, and also relative to what triggers and traumas were formed in the person.
Oh, I see. So, do you find that the energy, let's say I ask you a question, or a stranger comes up to you and asks you a question, do you find if that person's energy that they bring into, the words that they're speaking to you is also a trigger?
Yes, if they are extremely rushed and I can tell that they don't have the time, then that puts more pressure on me to get the words out quicker. And that's actually an invitation for me to really slow down. And what I've learned with my stutter is that it's actually a gift in a world that is so fast moving and so quick. And I just want to get from A to B. And a lot of people don't have the time. They tell you, I don't have the time. I believe the people on this planet that have been gifted a stutter have the opportunity to not try to keep up with the speed of everyone else, because they're not wired that way, and they're not that, their natural state of harmony is not that way. but they have the opportunity to help teach people the practice of slowing down and actually listening to what I have to say and not focusing on how I say it.
That's an amazing thing. And I do agree with you absolutely 100%. That's one of the reasons I speak a little slower than most. I just don't, one, I can't because my brain just cannot process information that fast as opposed to, let's say, my child. Um, that, they could blurb out, you know, 20 words in 2 seconds. But like I just, those were, I can't process that many words that fast. But it's very true because when we speak slowly and calmly, what it also does is makes the other person also calm.
Mm,
It brings the other person to a state of calmness and more awareness. Um, when you and I'm sure you've noticed when we're communicating with individuals where they speak so fast
hmm
that by the time they stop, they don't even realize half the stuff that they've said,
hmm
and half the things they said they didn't even mean to say it.
And half the people look like they've just run a marathon.
Yes,
They're puffing and panting, their shallow chest breathing, their nervous system and adrenals are shot from just having a conversation.
absolutely. And it's almost like they don't have control over the words because the words are just flowing in and they don't have that choice of filtering out and saying, wait a minute, I don't really want to say that. I want to say this, and taking that time. It just flows out.
Mm,
Where I think, like for you, and even for me, even though, my struggle is a little bit different, we're able because we have that time gap between the communication of the information what we want to say until it comes out, that we're able to filter out the words
mm.
and make choices of the words that we want to say.
Yeah, I feel that I've since a young age, I've, having had to really deepen my relationship with my voice, I've learned to put a lot of weight on the words that come out of my mouth because they were, naturally more challenging for a large period of my life to express and to get out. So I had to be sure of what I was wanting to communicate, you know, was of value and clear. So I think I've really come to put a lot of weight and intention on the words that come out of my mouth for that reason. It's like that's a gift from my stutter, which a lot of people could see as a obstacle of like, this makes me not clear and not want to speak. And it actually, other people can view me as not confident or nervous, which, well, your energy is beaming out. So it's like, even if you stutter or speak with a delay, if you're doing it with an energy of complete peace and confidence in how you sound, then it will get received that way too. It always starts with the individual. Anyone that is like saying like, oh, like it makes me look nervous. It makes no, that it's because you're probably feeling like nervous speaking that way. And once you come to peace with the way that you do sound or the way that you do act, then you're giving other people the opportunity to meet you there too. Because if, I believe your energy speaks before you walk into the room, long before you open your mouth and the words come out. So, over the years, I've been practicing walking into a room if I'm in a leadership position or just knowing I'm going to speak, confidently owning how my voice sounds just as it is. And then other people will experience my confidence and know that I'm not really worried about how my voice comes out because I'm just confident. And that doesn't mean I'm like avoiding feeling frustration or anything, but what it does mean is that I'm in complete acceptance with however my voice sounds on that day, and I'm not trying to make it perfect all the time.
That's right. And when you come to that state, then it's, you know, the world around you accepts you as you are as well.
Mm,
It's always a reflection of how you feel within. So when you come into complete acceptance of who you are and how you are, the world itself then also accepts you for who you are.
yeah.
Now, Cody, you mentioned like you've tried all these different things. Tell us about some of them. I know you mentioned hypnotherapy, there was some other speech therapy. So tell us about some of those. Did they help you somewhat? Did they bring you some knowledge or like breakthrough, or maybe it just gave you information of things that to avoid?
They taught me about how the current system looks at people only in parts of their bodies and not the whole thing. So when I was going to talk therapy when I was younger, speech therapy, they were only looking at what was coming out of my mouth and my throat. They weren't looking at my nervous system. They weren't looking at where traumatic emotions were stored in my body that were signaling to my nervous system. And, they were only looking at how can we make his mouth move in a way where he's using breathing and techniques in his throat where we can get him speaking, quote unquote, better. So it was very much just like and yeah, even with hypnotherapy, I remember you know, I would just get a cassette tape with, affirmations that I had to go to sleep to, and it would say some stuff like, imagine yourself walking down a street. You can speak confidently and bravely. You are a champion warrior. And I could get the impetus behind this, like of trying to basically brainwash myself into believing that I was confident. But at the level of my body, my nervous system's blueprint of safety was programmed to freeze, fight, or flight. So no matter how much affirmations you try and put in at the level of the mind, if your body is not in a state where it can actually like receive that, and its blueprint is to something completely different, you can't, that's a lot of the danger, I think, of just using affirmations, just positive thinking. Again, you're only looking at a tiny portion of the whole body. And a lot of,
Absolutely, I agree
yeah.
with you because when it comes to trauma, trauma is not just in the mind, right? It's an emotional state. But trauma is also in your body and your cells. Every cell is carrying that trauma, that memory of that trauma. So you have to heal the body as well
Mhm,
to match, the other parts of you, to match your soul, your emotional, your emotional body, your energetic body, all of these bodies that we carry, the physical, the emotional,
mhm.
the spiritual, um,
The
they
inner
all
child.
have to come together
Yeah.
and align. We can't just treat one, we have to treat them, together,
Mm.
um, to be able, to come to a good place. Um, Now, all these experiences, of course, led you to a specific, kind of awakening or a wake up call of, okay, I have to do something. I have to turn this around
Hmm.
because you were, just trying to please everybody, trying to fit inside of a mold that you didn't belong into. So tell us about that. So, what was that journey like?
This took 26 years to get to. And I believe that all the experiences along the way were perfect stepping stones up into that point. Like young Cody needed to go through all of that, trying to change himself to fit in, taking everyone else's beliefs of him personally, and this and this and this, even been at war with himself, been in denial of how his voice is, not loving himself for who he is, and being fixated on this idea of a person that he could be beyond this. So that led me to, I had moved over to America from New Zealand at the age of 22. I moved to Chicago to study film directing. That was my dream at the time. And uh, flash forward to being 26 years old. I was married at this point for 2 years. I was in a corporate job at an advertising agency that was sucking the creative soul out of me. And within 2 days, oh, and also I wasn't really in complete acceptance with my stutter. I was open about it, but it was very sporadic and selective. I'd made a movie about it, like a short film, and that was like the opening of like starting to really talk about it. And then when I was 26, I lost my job, and found out my wife was cheating on me in the space of 2 days. So we decided to split up and divorce. I was all of a sudden on my own. This all happened in under a week, and it was just me. And all these, I was in a deep place of pain, heartbreak, dark night of the soul. Who am I without my job? Who am I without her? And I remembered I had put my name down to go and volunteer at a camp for young kids who stutter, um, in a few months' time after that. And weirdly enough, like a month after that all happened, they called me up and were like, "Hey, we want to get on a Zoom call with you. We really need someone to do, like the videographer, stills, and you can work with the kids. Would this interest you? We'll pay you. It's not going to cost you anything." And I had nothing to do at that point. I had no job, no her. I was completely, and I looked at this opportunity, and it brought up all this fear, because the last time I was in a group environment of this, I was, I was made to go out to the street and speak at a slow pace and humiliate myself, essentially. So there was a lot of trauma wrapped up around that. And then there was a part of me that just said, this is going to be different. You're a different person now. I'd also been doing some inner child stuff and some deep internal, kind of personal work that, create, that all came as from the divorce and losing my job. It kind of spurned on this awakening. And then so I decided to say yes to the camp. And that was really the turning point for me. I went out to this camp and I was put in a room, staff training. I remember just being around all these other people who stutter of varying different ages. And it was like looking a room of mirrors in the eye, all these parts of myself that I hadn't looked at for my whole life, the parts of myself that I hid my speech, and all these people were just freely stuttering. And even if it would take them, I remember there was one time, a guy introduced himself and asked me how I was. It took literally 10 minutes, and I had to just stand there and stare him in the eyes. It was like meeting me, all the parts of me that I just pushed down and I hadn't looked at. And all the stuff was coming up and coming up. And the experience over the 2 weeks working with the kids was absolutely incredible, because the camp ethos was, we will meet you where you're at. We want to teach all these kids to love their voice regardless of how it sounds, channel and speak any emotions that come up into creative art, and also just conversation, so they can actually be emotionally aware about what's going on inside their bodies. It was like everything that I've been asking for my whole life. And I just realized while I was there, I didn't need to be anyone else. I could just be myself, and people would love me. They would hug me. They'd want to know more. They'd want to, it magnetized people to me by just being myself. And then on the last night, we had a ceremony where we all got these like white paper lanterns with these like little orange candle lights in it, and we had to write down a couple of memories that would last for us forever. and we all pushed them out onto this lake. And after everyone had gone to bed, I was down by the lake looking at all of them. And I was one of the only ones left. And I was reading, a few of the kids' things that they'd written on their lanterns. And one of them said, I really hope this year that I don't try to kill myself because how I speak. I really hope this year, that I make a friend that loves the way I talk, that doesn't hate the way I talk. I really hope this year um, that I love myself a little bit more. And it just brought up all this stuff in me because it was like everything that I was reading was stuff that I wish I'd given myself over a long period of time. And then it got to mine, and I just remember shrinking down into my body into that of like an 8-year old. It was kind of like an out of body experience. And then I just started to read my own and just started to cry. And then I noticed this little kid came up next to me in my mind's eye, my vision. And it was me at the age of about 5, probably. And he just walked up to me and he grabbed my hand and he just said, "You don't have to be scared anymore. It's time to use your voice." And it opened up something in me I've never experienced. And I think I cried for probably like an hour. And just, it was like this big coming to peace reconciliation moment with that little kid that I'd kind of pushed down. And I was really trying to hide from who he really was. And at that moment, he came back to help me realize that, like, who you are is beautiful, and just embrace it. And like, you don't have to be scared of being yourself, essentially. So it opened up this whole other world for me to look at for the first time what I've been gifted as a gift and an opportunity to, the one thing I'd been avoiding was my greatest gift all along. And now I started a business where I coach and guide people through big life transitions, through finding their voice, reconnecting to their soul and who they really are. And how am I doing it? I'm using my voice. I've started my own podcast with a stutter. How am I doing it? Using my voice. And I've just chosen to build things that are connected to who I am and what I want to offer the world. And it's all to do with my voice. The one thing that I thought I was my biggest burden and that I was running from the whole time. It was always right there, and it was always perfect. It was always guiding me to that moment. And it's
That's
guided me.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that I think because you're in that space of allowance where you felt finally free to express, how you really felt inside and let go, right? Of all those emotions that nobody was really addressing, like you said. Um, that it set you free.
Yeah.
And that inner child just coming up. Um, I always, when I work with clients, it's one of the biggest things is being able to heal that inner child.
Yeah.
That inner child's always there wanting you to let them free. And as soon as you allow that little boy was probably just happy that you gave him that space to say, okay, finally, it's okay to be me. It's just okay that my voice is okay. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. And that's just beautiful. And that's what everyone should allow themselves to do, regardless of what it is that their struggle is, whether it's a stutter or trauma, um, whatever it is that they're holding back. Just giving themselves that space to allow themselves to recognize that it's okay to
Yeah.
let go of those emotions. It's important. And it's a beautiful story. So tell us, how are you helping? Obviously, you're now using your beautiful voice, and it's a beautiful voice to help others. Now tell us, how do you help individuals now through your work?
Everything I do is very intuitive. So through the experiences that I've experienced, I think growing up, I think this one size fits all idea and only looking at parts of the bodies, that has all contributed now to how I help people. I meet them where they're at, like the camp met me where I was at. I look at all parts of them, their body, their nervous system, their past, their inner child, all these tools that I've been gifted along my walk, my path in life, literally that have carved my own path. Now I'm just like intuitively doing it with anyone that I work with. So my real gift is meeting you where you're at. I know also I can see what you can't see. That's my gift, is like I can look at a person, I can get a sense of their energy, where they're holding themselves back, what their potential is, and I can convey them all of that which is hiding under what they're currently uh, what they currently believe their expression or potential or limits are. I kind of break those chains for them and move them beyond that into a new expression, or remembering the true expression underneath that. Because I think like it's not about coming to a new version of you in this, it's just remembering versions of us that we've put stuff on top of. It's removing the barriers and the limitations so that the real you can have the space to play and have the space to be seen and allowed. And so I guess I'm just a big permission slip, and I'm a guide through all of that so that you can reconnect to your essence, your soul, and that little kid that wants to be completely expressed outwardly, but that may have experienced some things in the past where he learned to close off, play small, hide parts of himself because they weren't accepted or loved for what they were. And also restoring safety in the body is a big one. I think it all starts with that, because it's very hard to expand or to grow or evolve without changing our baseline of safety. So I think, yeah, that is in a nutshell what I do. But really, at the core of my work is empowering people to be the artist of their own lives. And
That's amazing.
yeah.
And what a wonderful gift, right? That you're using your voice to help others reconnect back to who they really authentically are,
Mhm.
and bring out what they have suppressed over the years. Um, what a wonderful work. Now, how can individuals get a hold of you if they wanted to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way would just be on Instagram, at Cody Matheson Packer, so CodyMathieson or you can look at me up on Instagram and look at my podcast as well. Artist Redefined is the name of my podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, everything, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube. And yeah, just reach out to me on there. I'm pretty active, and I would love to connect with you if like if my story resonates, from whatever aspect it did. And I love meeting new people and kind of connecting. So yeah, those are the ways that would be the easiest to connect with me, or even just follow my journey.
And I'll have your links down in our podcast if you want to connect with Cody.
Cool.
Cody, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
My pleasure, and I appreciate you for creating this space for people like me to spread my story. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next week, please remember to subscribe, share, and like so we could bring you out more of these stories to you every week. So until next time.